think, man.
I'm ready to do it.
You ready to roll?
Oh,
all right. Welcome to the Vetted Podcast, everybody. I'm Stephen Hermann.
I'm Kale Flaspohler.
We've got two special guests today. Daniel, pronounce your last name. I apologize. We got Tom Butera over here. Did I say that right?
Works.
All right. And Daniel Shears?
Cheers. Yep.
Cheers. So, yeah, great to have you both on today. And I screwed that up. That's all right. We got to have something at the beginning and be like, hey, how's this thing going to go? You know, is this going to unravel in the first 30 seconds, or are we going to have enough energy to make it through? But great to have you on. And you all are with Volition Vet and talking about Nu.Q cancer tests today. But before we get into that, let's talk about both of you guys. And Daniel, I got you up on the screen right now on my side, so I can see you. You're looking at me. Tom, you're up in the bubble over there. So, Daniel, tell us about you. Where'd you start? How'd you get here? And all that fun stuff. Give us some background.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for having us here today. So really, I am the Global Associate Director of Commercial Products here at Volition Veterinary, and I've been with the company for a little over 3 years now. Backing up a little bit, my background is really in marketing, sales, product launches for early to mid-stage companies. And I've been doing that in the vet space for probably almost 8 or 9 years now, starting off with a immunotherapy cancer treatment and regenerative medicine product, really trying to find the right product market fit and having to learn the whole science behind it, and then bringing that to how do we actually put that in a selling cycle and really be able to market it accordingly. So my passion has always kind of been in the veterinary regenerative medicine side, the veterinary oncology side, and I've had the opportunity to really bring that forward with the Nu.Q vet cancer test on bringing this new product to market, and really something that is near and dear to me as well, just with the amount of patients that pets we might have lost to cancer, and then being able to make that impact within the veterinary field.
Love it. So how'd you get into this?
Simply put, just with the previous connections I had and through a recruiter, I was actually reached out to when I was right at the end of COVID. So I was finishing my MBA, was reached out to by a recruiter at the perfect time, and I had the opportunity to be able to sit down with Tom and another staff member who unfortunately is no longer with us right now. But we sat down at VMX one year, and they told me their vision for the product and where they really wanted to see it. And I asked a few people around if they had ever heard about it. Most people said no at the time, but they thought it had a lot of potential. And, Tom was definitely an individual I wanted to be able to work with. So when they extended the offer, it was kind of just the right way to go.
So we'd like to keep digging here, all right? You're going to find this out about us. We want to keep digging.
All right.
Did you know you and me work in the veterinary space when you were in high school?
No. I always had a passion for animals. I grew up, I had 2 dogs growing up, typical gerbils and mouses here and there, just to learn responsibilities.
Smell of Peter chips still, when you walk by, yards got to think about your gerbils. Yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah. My mom has always been in the medical space. So she's actually on the human side, and she's a registered dietitian dealing in a very specialized field as well with patients with cystic fibrosis. And, she's a registered dietitian for that. So I think the medical side has always been something that's been interesting to me. Always considered maybe I would get into medical sales at one point in time. And when the opportunity came, it came through the veterinary side. And I think it just really brought that passion of being able to deal with animals, work with animals, and the introduction to the veterinary space, which after that introduction, it's a space I really don't ever plan on leaving again, just due to how great of a space it is.
It is a great space, and I think if I can bring Tom on now, Tom, welcome to the podcast, and great to have you on. And interestingly enough, as a veterinarian, you know this, and Daniel, I'm sure you know this. 9 out of 10 veterinarians, it's like at 5 years old, I knew I wanted to be a veterinarian, but I don't think your path was as direct as that. Is that correct? Becoming a veterinarian?
Yeah, that's true, Steve. And again, also thanks for having us on board here, especially a Missouri alumnus.
Heck yeah.
The interesting aspect about my life is I always had a passion for horses and cowboys from the time I was really young. Probably from the time I could put a holster on at 1 year of age, just walking around, with horse memorabilia and cowboy information dotted throughout my life. The interesting part about it is my mom wouldn't allow any animals in the house.
Yeah.
So consequently, I got real interested in animals outside the house. Of course, I love dogs and cats, but horses was a real passion. So consequently, as time came on, my dad's a dentist. He was in the medical field. He wanted me to go into dentistry for obvious reasons. So,
Mission planning.
yeah, it's just financial planning for myself. Well, the interesting part about it, as years went on, the horse passion just got greater and greater. And eventually I got into horses and was riding and did some showing at one point in time. And when I went to college, got a major in English and a minor in philosophy. And my dad asked me, "Hey, what are you going to do with your life?" And I said, Dad, I don't want to be a dentist. So it's interesting. At that point in time, I'd been riding horses. I had some horses that had some problems. I spent a lot of time off on the ground rather than on top of them, treating them.
Okay.
And I started thinking about this and said, horses, medicine, kind of an interesting combination rather than going to law school. I'd gotten an acceptance to go into law school. And I said, this isn't what I want to do. So that's where I put the combination together. And I said, geez, this is something I think I'd like to do. And I've never lost that passion ever since. So I decided to pursue veterinary medicine, realigned all my curriculum since I majored in English and minored in philosophy to gear up all my sciences. And I came out to Mizzou and I interviewed out there at the vet school. And of course, they said to me, you got a slim chance of getting in here based on your background. Well, I took that as a personal challenge, and consequently, some of the best years of my professional life were at Mizzou. I got an opportunity to meet some of the high-level docs and professors at the veterinary school. I worked with them, started working on my master's degree while I was there. So while I was in vet school, I was working on my master's in equine anesthesia, and consequently, that gave me that leg up to get into veterinary school at Mizzou. Tremendous number of friends, and graduated pretty high in my class, and here I am, 30, 40 years later. So that's kind of the story behind it.
Did you know a Dr. Corwin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he taught us parasitology.
You know who that is?
I don't.
So Don Corwin,
Yeah.
that has the furniture solutions.
Yeah.
He did all our workstations in our offices, and all the furniture around here. That's his father.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's so interesting how interconnected everything is. It's like, the mule barn here, right? We talked about across the street where Ozark Mountain Biscuit is, where that used to be where the cattle, cadavers were, right?
Yeah.
That learned on that. And then, yeah, Don's dad, moved, he's from New York, moved here. New York or St. Louis, one, too. He's got one of those accents that I think it might be New York. But anyways, yeah, and it ends up here, and like, it's just amazing how connected we all are on these things. So that's pretty cool. I'll have to hear some stories about Dr. Corwin, because Don's a hoot. His son is a great guy. Just a lot of energy, active, and has actually become a pretty good friend over the years. So it's pretty cool. Well, that's awesome. So yeah, University of Missouri. Saw that connection on LinkedIn. Like, I know we're gonna have a great conversation, Daniel. We'll have a good conversation, you too. But when you got the alumni relationship, there's something special about that. The cross generation. So that's wonderful. Well, hey, we've only gotten into like your mid to late 20s here, right? I mean, you're graduating out of school, and you go off and you did stay in the education space. So you did teaching, veterinary school, and working on anesthesia with horses and things of that nature, right? Before you got into Volition. So you've had quite a diverse background from what I can see.
Yeah, it's been very diversified, and interesting enough, I've never lost the passion. Once I got geared in towards medicine, I've never lost the passion. I'm highly interested in veterinary medicine, but I'm also very interested in human medicine. So I'm really looking to see what things we can do to be passionate about how we can help improve the lives of our pets, and obviously improve the lives of our own human beings as well. So that pathway, when I graduated from vet school, I did go work in an equine practice. Eventually, I started my own equine practice. While I started my own equine practice, we eventually had an 8-doctor practice. We did repro, we did performance work, a number of different things. And also, too, while I was doing that, Tufts University Veterinary School had asked me to come. They were expanding their small animal veterinary group into the large animal group. in a nearby town, Grafton, to where I was in Massachusetts, and they knew I had an interest in particular specialty in equine anesthesia. So I went over there, and it's supposed to be a 3-week stint to help them out. Turned out to be 3 years. Yeah. And so I was there teaching third and fourth year students, became an assistant professor, and taught them equine anesthesia, but it was large animal anesthesia as well. It was cattle, sheep, anything that was over probably 200 pounds, was involved in the large animal department. And it was really interesting. Had a really good experience. And so I would handle that, and I still had my equine practice going on. So at night I was doing that, and during the day, and plus colics at night, I was doing equine medicine, equine anesthesia. Did that for a few years. Eventually, then I really got geared into doing my own practice. I did have a number of boarded surgeons come over, and because we set up a surgical suite as well, because I could run anesthesia for them. So we had a surgical suite, we had a repro barn. It was a really active practice. We were in 3 or 4 states in the Northeast. So it was very active practice. Did that for a number of years. Interesting enough, as I'm sure you know about medicine, especially with equine medicine, it's 24/7, 7 days a week. It never ends. And consequently, I didn't get a chance much to see my kids during that period of time. So eventually I said, in the early 90s, when they get ready to go to high school, I said, I think maybe I need to change horses here and get back into small animal medicine, because we had built a small animal veterinary hospital. One of my docs had done that. We got into that. I got in and eventually sold the equine practice. Really had a strong interest in small animal medicine. Again, the medicine pitch is the passion. It was very easy for me to transition to small animal medicine because I really enjoy medicine. And we did that for about 10 years. I sold that hospital when they started doing a corporate consolidation. So I sold it to a group in around 2000 that was starting to acquire hospitals. And there I learned a lot more about P&L, what that meant. And we never learned anything about really business in veterinary school. Right. And consequently learned about P&L, learned about leadership, and learned a lot about managing people. So I was there for about 5 years. That group, we bought, so I had a number of leadership roles with them, in addition to working in veterinary hospitals that we acquired to improve their model and improve their capabilities, and also improve their ability to connect with pet parents and coming across to the clients in terms of appropriate recommendations and how to do that. So did that for about 5 years, met my 2 future co-founders while I was there. And then in 2003, we co-founded Pet Partners, which was a corporate consolidation group. It was the second largest corporate consolidation group that was built at the time. VCA obviously was the major one.
Yes.
And during that period of time, we started to consolidate hospitals. I was the chief medical officer, but I was one of the 3 co-founders. So I had a lot of the business development work, meeting with veterinarians, acquiring their hospitals, understanding what they were about. And we eventually acquired about 65 veterinary hospitals, 5 of which are specialty ER hospitals. And the rest were large GP practices, usually 3, 4, 5, 6 doctors in those practices. We were in about 39 states. That was an interesting journey. Learned a lot about really how to motivate veterinarians and how to motivate teams and really understand where their needs were. So it was a really, really great learning experience for me. As I said, I was the chief medical officer. Spent a lot of time. So we had about 450, 500 doctors and about 3,500 employees. So it was, a relatively large group.
Yes.
A lot to manage. So you learn a lot about managing people. Right? We sold that group in 2016 to Mars. Mars had already acquired Blue Pearl, which was one of the groups of VCA. And consequently, not VCA, originally VCA. And we were the second group in, and I worked at Mars. I stayed with Mars then because I felt an affinity to all those team members that were at Pet Partners. So we had acquired to stay with them and help them go through that transition. So I had leadership roles in business development at Mars, both at Banfield, at VCA, and as well as acquiring additional veterinary hospitals for Pet Partners. We had acquired actually up to about 90 Pet Partners hospitals. We added on a bunch, about 26 more at Mars, of which I was pretty integrally involved in. And interesting enough, now shorten this up a little bit, I have been following Volition as an investor for a period of time, just because I have an interest in biotechnology, and I'm very interested in in one medicine.
If I heard you right, you're interested, like it's medicine, period. It's not just animals, it's humans, it's about better
Yeah.
health, right? That's what,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and there's a lot of things I believe, I truly believe this today, and I work with groups that do, that a lot of the things you do on human medicine can be helped on the veterinary side and vice versa. We've built up some silos over time where veterinary medicine is here and human medicine is here, and there hasn't been a tremendous amount of communication between the two. And I think we can really benefit by the great minds that are on both sides and really help accelerate both diagnostics as well as therapeutics to a much greater degree to help the humans and the animals that we treat. So I'm a big supporter of that, and consequently, that's what led me into really following Volition and biotech, trying to find out things that could be applied to the veterinary side. So interestingly, Volition had a diagnostic platform that was involved with, and we can talk about it later, but was involved with epigenetics. And I asked, could that, because they were doing early diagnostics in cancer on the human side. They particularly at that point in time were looking at colorectal cancer, seeing if in fact, I know everybody's familiar with Cologuard, but they were looking to see if there was another biomarker that Volition could produce that could work even more effectively than Cologuard. And I think their early work found that it would work, but it wasn't statistically significant enough to make it more advantageous than Cologuard. But I was interested in the liquid biopsy because it's a liquid biopsy blood test. And I asked the CEO a couple of times, could you transfer this over to the animal side? And he said, that's an interesting point, but no, we haven't done that. And I asked him a couple of times, and eventually, I was busy at Mars. I found out that they made a connection with Texas A&M Veterinary School, and they made a connection in particular with Dr. Heather Wilson Robles, who's a professor of oncology there, led the oncology department. And Heather, through her great work, substantiated the use of that biomarker, which is called Nu.Q, that they were working on the human side, took that platform and was able to validate it for use in the dog.
That's all.
And during that period of time, she wrote a couple of papers. These were peer reviewed. Everything that we've done has been peer reviewed. And she was about 2 years into that, or a year and a half into it. And Volition then had asked me to sit on their board as an advisor, which I did. It wasn't a conflict with Mars. They were perfectly fine with that. I did it for about 3 months. And then at that point in time, they asked me, hey, Tom, would you give serious consideration to leading the commercial side, bringing the first commercial product on the veterinary side to the veterinary group? And I really had a passion for it because I really thought this is an unmet need. In veterinary medicine, we were treating pets, in particular dogs, when they're sick and when they're symptomatic, with not a whole lot of great success over a period of time, or improved success. If we could get to them early when they're asymptomatic and treat and identify cancer early, as we were beginning to do in human medicine, this is something that our colleagues, I think, could really benefit by. And I hopefully the pet parents would as well.
I love that. As you know, as a veterinarian, and I think that maybe a lot of pet owners don't know, is how much the animal hides from the pet owner. Because they want to please their pet, they want to please the owner, right? The owner gives them food, gives them treats, takes them on walks, and so they hide a lot. And that as a veterinarian, that when the animal comes in, you're like, I got some news for you. And so this is something to say that before any of that can happen, the dog can't speak for itself. The earlier we can know what's going on, the better results we can have and outcomes, and not have to get in probably expensive procedures and things that change the lifestyle of that animal for the owner, for the people that watch them. Am I reading that right? Kale, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think it's always indicative. They're never gonna show you their weakness. So, or maybe they won't until they absolutely have no choice. But can I ask a question about some of the things you talked about earlier? And this comes up with my clients a lot. And so when you talk about building a team, building a culture, all moving in the same direction, you've done that at a pretty massive scale, sounds like several times. And so can you maybe offer some advice to folks that are listening that are like, how do I build a team, maybe not to that scale, but how do I build a team that, is all marching in the direction that I need them to be going in?
Yeah, I think some of the hallmarks of that, Kale, it's great because you can apply it to whether you're leading a group that's repairing vehicles or you're leading a group that's finding the next great thing in medicine. Listening is a big part of communication. 80% of it is listening. And I think also not going back to how you did it, as opposed to putting yourself in the present in terms of listening to what struggles do they have? What struggles does this generation have? Where are the hot points with them? To say, this is the way I used to do it back in the days of the Roman Empire, that doesn't resonate well, especially for building a team. And consequently, I think really the hallmarks is listen, put yourself in their shoes, put yourself in the perspective of the team members that you're dealing with, and try to address what their needs are and be less concerned about what your needs are. And I think when you develop that type of rapport, you can accomplish really great things in terms of building a team, because then you want to create a safe environment when they're together and you're talking about things. You don't want them to say things to you that you will yes to. You don't want to be yes men. You want them to speak their minds. You want them to share and contribute to the conversation on what they're thinking. And they also want to make sure that you validate the contributions that they make. Maybe the team doesn't go in that direction, which is fine, but you validate what they're saying. And I think those are the hallmarks of what I found, at least worked for me, that have been able to build teams and let them really become quite creative.
Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. I appreciate the advice. I think it comes up all the time, and everybody has those questions about how am I doing a good job at that? How do I know if I'm doing a good job at that? And how do I go about doing it? And so listening is key there. Yeah, I like what you said.
Absolutely, and I think that as a veterinarian, you said it earlier. It's funny. At the school, some will say we teach business stuff at the school. Like, yeah, you have some business classes, right? But when you're studying for the NAVLE, and there's no business, it's not business stuff there, right? It's anatomy, it's science, it's it's all those things that you're not going to remember that 3 hours of business class. There's no way. And the only way I think it was Steve Jobs that said as becoming a good business owner, a good leader, those things, there's one way to do it, just to do it. Like you can read all the books you want to read, which are good, but at some point you just have to do things and get in the mix. And so you've done that multiple times. And what a great opportunity here now to bring an amazing product across from human over to here, which MU does do collaboration on both sides, the human and animal research both ways. They've had some pretty good results on that, so hopefully they continue to do that. I love hearing that. It's what are we made out of? Four elements? Is it carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen? Something like, is that the four we're made out of, right? And that's the four. Like Neil deGrasse Tyson says that we live in the universe, and the universe lives in us, and because of those four elements. And so yeah, across. So that's awesome. How can we help our community, our veterinarians, that are our clients, our friends, and even those that are, with the importance of this is those that are pet owners, knowing about Nu.Q from Volition. What is that why do we need this?
Daniel, why don't you speak to it a little bit? I know I do a lot of the speaking. Why don't you give your perspective to it, and then I can certainly add to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as Tom has alluded to before, when he's in practice, and just if we look at every veterinarian as well when they're in practice, so many times it really comes down to we're being more reactive to what's coming through the door rather than being proactive. And once we have to be reactive and we're trying to solve the issue that's currently going on with that patient, trying to figure out what the best options are for and hoping for the best, that the tools that we have available at that time will actually help that patient, and that the patient's owner, the pet owners, can actually really afford that, both emotionally and financially, creates a lot of additional stress and a lot of additional concern about, will this actually work and what's next? So where Nu.Q really comes into play is we can be more proactive to where potentially we could find things like these cancers earlier, to then be able to provide better options, provide better outcomes, and really provide those types of treatments that we all feel more comfortable with, both financially and emotionally as pet owners, and even as the veterinarians in the veterinary community, having that better conversation with them as well. I think one of the biggest questions that we get with this in general is, I didn't even know, or it's possible to screen for cancer. And how we typically refer to it is, just like us as humans, we have multiple cancer tests that are available for out there based upon our gender and the age. And that's part of regular screening that we do. And now we're proud to be able to bring it here to the veterinary side so we can provide that same type of care for our pets, which we know age faster and deal with cancer just as often the as the canine community does and feline community.
What age do you do this at for the animal?
Our recommendations is you want to start with healthy senior patients, so starting around the age 7 and older to do, and we recommend at least twice a year as well. As a reminder, it is a snapshot in time. It's not a forward indicator, just like any other test that we currently have, or if you do regular blood work, it's very possible you do blood work, right then and there, and then 6 months down the road, there could be an issue. So as they get older, we want to make sure we're doing it at a more frequent level. And then also we recommend for our predisposed breeds starting the age 4 and older. And some of the most common predisposed breeds that we're thinking is golden retrievers or labs, Bernese Mountain Dogs, German Shepherds, boxers, the ones that walk through the door. We just kind of already know that unfortunately they might be predisposed. We can definitely start them a little bit earlier and start around the age of 4 and older.
Can you talk a little bit about, since our audience is typically geared toward private owners, what's the economic impact to a practice that would implement this?
What we always try to do is have this as an affordable screening test. There's other tests that have been out there that unfortunately, just due to the economics of it, it makes it very difficult to have as a screening test. We've seen it both on the human and on the veterinarian side. So we have a priced affordably through the individual lab partners. And when I say affordably, it's under $100 to the practice. And then, of course, you have your markup on top of that. So the key way to think about this is, since it's priced that affordably, this is a volume test, really, that you want to be able to run as often as possible and keep the cost as low as possible, because you will get more acceptance from the pet owners. If you go in and you're already doing a full blood panel, and let's say that exam, the blood panel is maybe $200 to $300, and then you're trying to add an extra $400 on top of that for a screening, it's very difficult to try to get the pet owner to say yes. But if you're saying, for an extra $75, we can also screen for potential cancers that they might be high risk to, you'll get much higher acceptance from the pet owners. And really, pet owners are looking for something of this sort. So we try to add it in, again, at the affordable cost so you can do more of these. And then it also allows for additional tests later on to potentially pick up more of that margin where you start doing some of the imaging and other tests along those lines.
And so this works with their existing equipment they have. Which diagnostic equipment are you working with?
Yeah. So we have two options in the US. Currently, you can send it out to the reference lab, and we work with IDEX. So you can send it out to the IDEX reference labs. And then Antech also has it available on a point of care device. So you can actually have it in the hospital, get the results within 6 minutes. And they're, I believe, about half the cost as well. So there's both options that are available. They're the same test, whichever way that you go. But we wanted to make sure that it's as accessible as possible for all of our practices based upon their preference of lab.
Is IDEX looking to add that into their in-house lab machines?
So Antech actually does have an exclusive on the point of care. However, the lab is not exclusive.
Okay, so the reference lab is going to be that way. Okay, wonderful. How long has this been in the market now? The product. How long has the product been in the market?
I wasn't sure if Tom wanted to take it.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
So we launched about 3 years ago. As Tom mentioned, we started at Texas A&M University, and we actually launched through the GI lab there. And shortly after doing a small stint there, we were able to expand it out to IDEX labs. And of course, that was actually HESCA at the time of that and the point of care, which was required by Antech. Within those 3 years, we've gone to over 22 different countries that the test is now available through. And we have about 8 individual lab partners globally that we work with as well that offer this test. And just last year, we sold over 120,000 tests as well. And we look to continue growing that number.
Great. That's wonderful. Yeah, there's a lot more animals out there that can use that for sure. So how many, I guess there's not a capacity really limit on it. The labs can handle it. There's not a issue there if another 100,000 tests were done today?
Absolutely.
That makes it really nice.
Yeah.
To give you some context on that, Steve and Kale, in the U.S. alone, we have between 84 million and 90 million dogs, a comparable amount in terms of cats. Since 50% of the dogs over the age of 10 pass from cancer, on an annual basis, there are over 6 million dogs that develop cancer. That's a huge number.
Just in the U.S. Just in the U.S.
Just in the U.S. alone. Just in the U.S. alone.
Yeah.
So as Daniel rightly said, this test is supposed to be used, this first application, we have other applications that are coming, but this first application is to be used on well animals, on healthy animals. And we can go more into the science of that in a little bit.
Absolutely.
But that's an important piece, and that's why he said it's a volume test. On average, veterinarians probably, a regular GP practice probably sees half of their exams are wellness exams, health exams. Dogs coming in for their heartworm tests, for vaccinations, maybe a little bit of blood work based on their age. So consequently,
Get about expressing anal glands and maybe the famous toe tree, toe
that's all part of it. That's all part of it. Yeah, exactly. So the opportunity to test a lot of dogs is there, and to incorporate it into their wellness panels or wellness exam is part of the opportunity to test a lot of dogs. Most of them, 90% of them, are going to come back normal. There's about 5 to 8% of them that are going to come back with high numbers with Nu.Q. Unfortunately, in the United States, that number is huge because it's 6 million dogs that develop cancer. So that's why Daniel was recommending keep the cost reasonable, encourage your clients to do this test so that we can hopefully identify things earlier. And it's meant to be a positive message. It's meant to prepare the pet parent for what next steps could be. Even if in fact they choose not to do something in terms of additional diagnostics, it's preparation. And that's what we as the veterinary community have a responsibility to the pet parents and to our beloved pets that are cared by them, is to inform them and to educate them and to prepare them. Something that we would like to see even more from the human side as well in terms of preparation. So that's what we're really trying to do. And that's why this test becomes so important, because we're really trying to identify a different population than what we normally deal with. Normally we're dealing with the sick population.
Right.
That's when we get all geared up to diagnostic. We're trying to shift that conversation to the the healthy population, so that we can identify earlier and have hopefully have much better outcomes and have a longer life. And also hopefully bring that cost down so that pet parents can afford to treat. Which unfortunately now it becomes really, really expensive when you have to send them to the oncologist or the GP doctor takes it on because they can't take that financial burden on.
And you're catching that before the tumor happens and all those things. Yeah, the goal, of that is ideally that'd be the goal before things form that need surgery and of that nature.
Yes. And our test in particular with reference to lymphoma and hemangiosarcoma, and this will really resonate with the colleagues that you're speaking to in your podcast, 35% of what we deal with in veterinary medicine on an annual basis are those two diseases, lymphoma and hemangiosarcoma. And we spend probably close to 65% of our time treating those two diseases.
Okay.
So we have the highest detection rate with our test with lymphoma and with hemangiosarcoma, 77% detection rate with lymphoma, 82% detection rate with hemangiosarcoma. The interesting thing about that is, and also we detect histiocytic sarcoma, which is also a very adverse blood cancer that develops. It's a smaller percentage, but that's in the 60% ratio. Again, this is a blood-based test. So obviously, when we get into the technology, the nucleosomes are what we are quantifying to test, the biomarker that we're testing, which is H3.1, which is this Nu.Q. That is really giving an indication strongly of blood cancers. And the three I just mentioned are blood cancers. Now, when you get some of the other solid tumors like mast cell tumor or melanoma or osteosarcoma, those are more controlled and more defined in terms of solid tumors. So consequently, the blood flow to them is not going to be as great. So our test is not going to come up as high in terms of the detection rate. So overall, when you put all of those together, lymphoma, hemangiosarcoma, and 5 or 6 of the other big cancers that are out there, it's about 50%. But the lean in is especially evident in lymphoma and hemangiosarcoma and histiocytic sarcoma. And that's true also on the human side. The liquid biopsy tests that have come out with Grail and Guardant have a stronger indication towards blood-based cancers than they do with solid tumors. But I think over time, we will get better at that. It's just a matter of doing more scientific research.
And this is epigenetics.
Yes.
And so as we talked about it, and I obviously I have a finance degree, and I did not stay at a Holiday Inn last night. Is that a bad joke? So I definitely don't know. Maybe Daniel, maybe he laughed. Kale may not know what I'm talking about.
I have no clue what you're
And
talking
they don't remember those commercials. That's all right. Tom does. You ever seen those before?
No.
So the guy would show up in a lab coat in a hospital, and that was a great surgery or whatever. And yeah, I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't a doctor. That was the joke, right?
Funny
I
commercial.
stayed at a Holiday Inn last night. So yeah.
I remember.
Tom's going to cut this piece, please. Peace out. No, but if we talk about it though, because there are listeners. There's break that down. That epigenetics because it's different than genetics. We talked about it. Genetics is looking at the genes over here, right? Defects in genes, and epigenetics is looking at for markers on what could be potential for indication of early cancer detection.
Daniel, you know this very well. You've been educated very well on it. Why don't you describe it and I can add where we're indicated.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to think about epigenetics is, of course, it's looking at those specific biomarkers within the blood to see what might be actually occurring. And then, of course, that opens up a significant amount of different applications that are available, especially based upon what biomarker we're specifically looking for and what that happens to relate to. Our test happens to look at the quantification of nucleosomes, but there's also other biomarkers that are out there as well that have looked at the cell-free DNA, have looked at exosomes. Some have even looked for urine and things along those lines. So there's a lot of different ways to be able to use epigenetics, and it's compared to just genetics, where genetics you're looking at the actual code of the DNA, and that's where a lot of the defects might come from, or a lot of the diseases that are typically looked at. But they create more deformalities or some other conditions within the body. So the reason why epigenetics is so powerful is mostly this is when something from the disease is occurring. Using epigenetics, we're able to diagnose what might be occurring or have some sort of indication of what might be occurring, and then where we can go ahead and focus to try to treat that area.
Did you say you could think about also why it occurs, how it occurs, what's causing that to happen? That cancer, like it's environmental or things of that nature versus gene defects?
I think some of that still needs some additional studies on.
Yeah.
I think in certain circumstances you probably could, but as of right now, the research isn't necessarily clear. I will say one of the things, especially when we're talking about cancer within pets, it's very similar to your environment, whether you're a human or whether you're a dog or cat, really does matter as well. So there's plenty of stories, if you look all the way back in history of really bad diseases that have occurred simply because of the environment that humans were in. Animals were dealing with the same type of diseases as well. They were just never really diagnosed, and it wasn't something that was looked at. So it's very similar in this case that if you do have those kind of conditions, potentially look in the environment, see what additional things are going from there. Our test does not specifically look at something along those lines, but just in general, of course, what you expose yourself and your pets to.
I mean, as you build your database, geographic location, things that matter. It's the site in St. Louis. I mean, St. Louis was where did the nuclear atoms for the bomb,
Right.
And right off of the airport is a burning incendiary underground nuclear site.
Yeah, probably not the best place to live.
Yeah, no, you think about that, right? It's interesting, but I think these are all things that are good because it, like you talked about, I love it. It's not the pets bring a lot for the people. I mean, especially older, that need be able to get out and walk and do things, and the longer the pet can live and be a companion, that's a great thing. So longevity, health of the pet. That's what I'm hearing. Is that?
And I think, Steve, too, to maybe even put it in, even just add a little color to what Daniel was saying. If you think about epigenetics, the genetic code is the computer. Epigenetics is the software.
Okay. Okay.
If
So
you
like
put in that-
your processor chip, and then you've got.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. And the nucleosomes, as you and I had chatted about, so that the audience knows, you have your chromatin matrix, which is part of your cell-free DNA. And in your chromatin matrix, you have DNA in the chromatin network. There are 8 proteins that come off of a chromatin body, and each one of those proteins are surrounded by a DNA coil. That DNA coil around that protein is a nucleosome. Nucleosomes is what we measure. When there is cellular death, which can occur with cancer or with an acute inflammatory response, pancreatitis, lung disease, pneumonia, whatever the case may be, when you get cellular death, those proteins break off of that chromatin matrix and they circulate in the bloodstream. Our test can quantify those nucleosomes. So we come up with numbers that correlate to cancer or to inflammation based on the values of what those are. They're not prognostic in terms of giving you the severity of disease, but they are an indication, a detection that something is wrong. In that healthy animal, when you have a high number of Nu.Q or nucleosomes in the bloodstream, that probably is leaning you towards additional diagnostics towards cancer. Because if it's a well animal and everything appears to be normal, physical exams, some of the blood work, things are looking pretty good, you're leaning more towards cancer diagnostics. In the sick animal, which is where this test should not be used, we have other tests that are going to come down the road we're working on right now. Remember, when our test is elevated, it is both a biomarker for cancer and inflammation. So that's why it's meant to be used in the healthy animal. Now, hyperthyroidism, alopecia, canine otitis externa, veterinarians are knowing what you're talking about here, osteoarthritis, those are chronic ailments, and they don't cause acute inflammation, so you can run our tests.
Okay.
Not a problem, because those are frequently presented on wellness exams all the time. But anything that is an acute inflammatory response, or you get even dentistry, if it's a normal dental mouth, that shouldn't affect things. If you open that dog's mouth up and you can't, and you know there's pus in there, well, then you probably have an acute inflammatory infectious thing going on. Our test will probably be elevated. So normal things that we see in an exam, it's probably not going to affect. But anything that's acute, it probably is. And the other point to bring up for our colleagues again, if in fact you get a high number and you decide to stage your diagnostics, additional diagnostics with the pet parent, you may not find lymphoma or hemangiosarcoma or some solid tumor early on and say, well, geez, the test isn't working right. That's not the case. Remember, these nucleosomes are going to be elevated. If there is a problem going on in that body, you cannot ignore it. So what it means is you're either too early, because the nucleosomes will show up before the disease may be clinically apparent. So either you make a decision to repeat that test again later on, maybe you do additional diagnostics, or maybe something else is going on, like a low-grade pancreatitis or something that affected the dog, and then you repeat the test in 3 to 4 weeks and it goes away. But you cannot ignore it. So it depends on what your relationship is with the pet parent and your exam of the animal as to what your next steps would be. But it's really, it's detecting something, and one just needs to be aware of that.
So it's not giving you a false positive.
No.
It's giving you something is going on.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
the false positive, the specificity of our test is 97%, which means only 3% false positive.
Could you hear about that in human medicine on some of these cancer screenings, right? You can get a false positive or various things that you do. And that's
Yes.
one of the worst things to do to a human. I mean, dogs, they don't know the result of the test, but you give a human even a false positive, they're going to, still.
Yeah, and Cologuard has high, Cologuard's around 86%, 84% specificity. It's a 14, 15%
Wow.
false positive. So it's high.
High number.
That's why they recommend, if you haven't had if you've had any history of colorectal cancer, you probably should definitely be doing an endoscopy
Mm.
and not just, not endoscopy, but colonoscopy.
Yeah.
But, those that don't have a history of having colon cancer are more leaned in towards doing a Cologuard test because, quite frankly, it's related to the false positivity.
Okay. Kale, what you got?
I don't know that I have any questions. This has been super interesting.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would ask is what have we not talked about that you think our listeners need to know? And maybe you feel like we've hit everything, but I definitely want to give you guys an opportunity to speak on what you feel is super important about this.
This is the question we say, like, you shut your laptop down, Zoom's over, right? And you're like, crap, I didn't cover that. I'm pretty sure y'all are pretty well oiled, but yeah, it's a great question.
Yeah.
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 Well, I'll start it and then I'll let Daniel finish up with it, the things I don't cover. Daniel and I and our team are educators. We have spent the last 3 years going around the world educating veterinarians about this. We have not spent a lot of time talking to pet parents. We are now beginning to do more podcasts and we're doing more outreach to pet parents so that they become more aware about cancer screening. The important thing, the questions that the veterinarians ask us all the time: how do I introduce this into my practice? Do I have to spend 30 minutes talking about cancer? Well, let's answer that first question. No, it's part of your wellness visit. Mrs. Jones, you're bringing Fluffy in. We're going to do the heartworm, the Lyme test, the anal sac expression. We're going to do those things. And you know what? It's a golden retriever and he's 5 years old and there's an higher indication for cancer. And we have a very affordable screening test. Let's add that on. And most of the time it's going to be normal. But if it comes back positive or high, we need to have more of a discussion about that. That took about 30 seconds to have that conversation. And that's why it's supposed to be brought into the wellness visit. Bring it in. It fits into the veterinarian's workflow as opposed to having a whole conversation about cancer. Veterinarians are very tied into their workflow on how they're going to approach the wellness. The second thing they ask is, what type of conversation do I have with the client if it comes back high?
Yeah.
Big question we get all the time. Look at your patient, check the history of your patient, make sure you get a really good physical exam, talk to your pet parent, see how anxious they are potentially about this. If they're very aggressive and want to do a lot of things right now, well, then you may elect to do some significant diagnostic. If they're more, well, doc, what do you advise, doc? Well, we can do some diagnostic staging. Let's take some chest x-rays and some abdominal x-rays, and let's see if we see anything. If we don't, and the dog seems to be fine, maybe we'll repeat the test again in a month and see where it's at. So you have to talk to your pet parent. But the responsibility is with the doctor and the veterinary team to communicate that and to listen to the anxiety of the pet parent and make sure that the exam is really, really well done. The third thing they frequently ask us about is, how costly is the test? And Daniel spoke to that already. And our recommendation always with them is keep it reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's a volume test. So, and then probably the fourth question is where can I get it, and how do I utilize it? So, Daniel, if I've missed something there, you can add to what I just chatted about.
No, I think you definitely covered a lot of it, Tom. Just a few additional things that I want to mention at the end as well. As Tom mentioned, we're here for the education aspect of it. So if any of your practices out there are interested in getting a lunch and learn set up virtually, or just getting additional information, is the right patient for this test, or can I go ahead and do this because of the previous history, definitely reach out to us. We're here. We have a team that's available to be able to answer your questions for you. We'll include our hotline email and information, so that way you guys can access it. And if you go on our website as well, our website does have a lot of tools and resources to be able to download that are available for not only pet parent education, but in-clinic education as well. One of the key things I want to touch on that we mentioned earlier in regards to false positives is typically what we see when there might be a false positive actually comes down to things along the lines of sample collection. So the sample processing and the sample collection is very important. We have our most up-to-date sample processing collection route available on our website. And again, that's something that we educate on. So please definitely make sure you take a look at that. And I think the most important message that I really want to leave with everyone that's listening today is we're all dog lovers, we're all animal lovers out there. Try it on your own pet first. That way you feel comfortable with it. That way you know the whole process. I've gotten it done on my German Shepherd every year for the past 3 years that I've been here. She just turned 7, so now it's actually going to be every 2 or twice a year that I have to do it. And, ironically, we actually used her kind of as a test for my animal hospital when they were bringing the test on board. And we had some issues with the sample processing initially. And I was happy that it was my dog that they had issues with, because we were able to go back in, we were able to get another sample, and we were able to review with the staff on the best way to be able to process a sample for their workflow. And now they're running a significant amount of these tests on a monthly basis. So we're always available for here. Run it on your own dog first. I know it might be scary and nobody wants to hear about the cancer thing, but remember, this is about being proactive, not reactive, and trying to be able to detect it early. So that way we do have better options than that.
Why don't you give a 30-second spiel on the sample collection, just so that everybody hears it?
Be great.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the sample, one of the key things you might have heard about our test is that we needed a fast. There's no longer a fasting protocol needed. So you can go ahead and have that patient come in, whether it's first thing in the morning and they just ate breakfast, or if it's in the afternoon, go ahead and feel free to run this test. We need about 2 to 5 mLs of blood. You're going to fill up an EDTA tube, spin that down within 1 hour of collection, remove the plasma, put it in a non-additive tube, and then if you ship it out to the reference lab, you'll ship it out next to an ice pack. Just make sure it's wrapped in bubble wrap or paper towel so it's not directly touching the ice pack. Or if you work with Antec and you have the Element I Plus, then you have it on the cartridge. You can stick it immediately in there, and they give you the cartridge and the pipettes, and you get the results back in 6 minutes.
That's great. I love technology. It's fabulous. We're all learn from it, all going to live longer. And I think about, as you continue to get more information in the system, and heck, it's a technology company, right? I mean, yes, it's medical diagnostics, but it's a technology company. And as DeepMind AI founder was talking about on 60 Minutes the other day, if anyone saw that, he says he believes in 5 to 10 years, with quantum computing, AI, and this great scientist and collection, we should be able to beat diseases. We should be able to beat diseases in the next 5 to 10 years, and you're all at the front of that. And that's why I'm getting chills right now, because I'm a believer in that. I'm an optimist, and I can't appreciate y'all enough for what you're doing for the community, for the veterinary community, and for medicine as a whole. So we're here to work together. And yeah, let's continue to talk, continue to spread the good word, because I believe in what you're doing. I really do, and I look forward to seeing my pets have that. I've got a 9 and a 10-year-old, so I need to have them on it. There's no question about it, because I want them to be around for a while and help. I want quality of life, right? We want quality of life. I do want quantity of life, but I want the quality to match the quantity. I'm sorry, I could keep going now. I'm fired up, but we got to end it. So, yep. Kale, what you got? Anything to end on?
No, I'm just happy to hear about it. It seems like it can actually, maybe add a little bit of a profit piece to some of our clinics as well if they adopt this well into their systems. And so, I just appreciate you guys being on and sharing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to do it again. We'll check in and see how things are going along. And so, hey, this has been a great podcast. We will include on our website your contact information, what you want to have on there, your website, those kinds of things. So we'll spread that on social media so people know how to get in touch with you. And so that'll be out there. And hey, I think we've got a friendship going. So that's the best part of this all. So thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Kale, for being on today on the Better Podcast. If you all like what we're doing out there, please subscribe to our channel. Hey, send us a message. If you want to know something about the veterinary space, or got questions about business management, got questions about, as we get into learning more and more about epigenetics, exciting technology in the veterinary space, message us. We're here to work together. We're just another viewpoint in the industry, and we thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
And peace and blessings.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was fun, and we'll